Hi, this is Kazy Hinds, your mayor, and we are here today with Chris Schmiesing, our Community and Economic Development Director here in the city of Piqua. And we're going to do a little bit of a walking tour today to talk about placemaking, the placemaking initiative that we have been focusing on here in our community over these past, how many years, Chris?
It's been a work in progress since the comp plan in 2007.
I was going to say, it's been a while since we've been talking about placemaking, so who better to have us walk our city and talk about that than Chris. So we're going to start here. We are in our city building and we have this wonderful model here. So let's talk a little bit about placemaking and kind of what it means and why we're looking at it here in our city.
Sure. So, I mean, a lot of people think of their community and it evokes a certain emotion. And the thing with placemaking is it's what creates the places or spaces that evoke those emotions. So as a community, obviously you want to put your best foot forward in terms of people's impression that they have, the impression they have when they come visit your community, or if they live here, how they feel about their community. So it's really about making sure that the places within our place, Piqua, are the best they can be. And not just the best they can be in terms of you know, the shiny latest new object, but also how it relates to how you as a person feels when you're in that space. So placemaking is really about creating places that are comfortable for people.
Well, and I think about the feeling that you get when you're in that place, because that makes you want to come back. For example, if you're down at Loch 9 and you go to, whether it's down a river, down a beer, or maybe even Rock Piqua, and you get this wonderful family feel, you get this excited feeling, so you say, hey, I want to go back and I want to be part of that.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, when we started the Rock Piqua event, we said, hey, let's put this down on the riverfront. Because everything's better by the water, right?
Exactly.
And we're trying to, you know, we're thinking about how we could recreate the Loch 9 park space and activate that area. But a lot of people really didn't have a sense of appreciation for how close that space is to the downtown and the amenities that we have in the downtown, or the, you know, the building stock that sits adjacent to the site and what that looks and feels like in terms of the nostalgic qualities that it represents. So, you know, Rock Piqua was a great example of an event that really creates a sense of place in the way we define the area, and then you introduce those amenities, be it the stage and the quality of the performers and the beverages and the food, and then you introduce all those people, some 3,000 people, into that place, and it, as you said, has a really good vibe. It just makes you feel good, and that's really the essence of placemaking.
Right, and I think, like I said, I think about the events we're already doing down there before we even begin the renovation project. And what more events will come once we are through. So we have this great visual here of kind of what the what Loch 9 will look like when we're done. Do we want to talk a little bit about kind of what we have here? I know this has traveled around some. It's been in Winans, it's been in the library. We've had it in different places around the city, but it's a great. The consultants we've been working with actually put this together to give us a great visual of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so it's a 2-scale model of Loch 9 Park and at the intersection of Main and Water Street on the bend in the river, in the Great Miami River, which is the nationally designated water trail that runs right through Piqua, Ohio. And so if I go back to the comprehensive planning document, in that planning exercise, the community told us that, you know, we have this tremendous asset in the riverway that we really don't take full advantage of it. We really don't engage in the river or, you know, realize the full potential in terms of what it represents for nature and or recreation opportunities. So a big emphasis of the Loch 9 Park project was to really create those connections between the community proper and the downtown and the riverfront and the downtown trail system and the regional trail system, I should say, that connects Piqua to all of the communities in Southwest Ohio. So we have, we're at the beginning or end of the 340 miles of paved trail system throughout Southwest Ohio. And then you couple that with the fact that the East-West Trail is the Ohio to Indiana Trail on the state and national planning documents. And all of a sudden you realize you're at the crossroads of a pretty significant location on the regional trail system. So not only is the trail system something really cool and important to local residents in terms of the lifestyle they want to live and the quality of life they're seeking out, but it also connects us to that sense of a regional destination that the Riverway talks a lot about. But Loch 9 Park proper, you know, in the 90s it was reconfigured. It used to be a lot of you will remember a used car lot and an alley. So what's there now is certainly better than what it was, but it didn't really do justice to the fact that we have Lock 9 on the Miami and Erie Canal that represents a huge moment in Piqua's history in terms of the industrial growth and the wealth that was generated in our community. So we wanted to do a better job of celebrating Lock 9, the actual lock, but also do a better job of connecting that trail system into the downtown, connecting pedestrians on Main Street to the riverfront, and then also building upon the Rock Piqua experience and really making this a signature gathering space with a performance pavilion, some shade and some tree groves, a splash pad, and some public art elements that really depict the history of the canal in Piqua. So that's what this model represents, and of course it gives you the idea of scale and proportion, the park space as it relates to the areas behind those existing buildings that could be transformed into those cool establishments that everybody likes to go frequent when they're in a community where they're enjoying it. There's a good vibe. They don't quite know why, but something feels right. We think that's what this becomes, and so that's what this is depicting, and it really does a good job of giving folks a sense of what could be when we do the Lock 9 Park project.
And it's so exciting because, Chris and I both travel outside of our community quite a bit to workshops and different conferences. And, time and time again, we hear people saying, wow, there's some really exciting things happening in your community. Yeah. You really have some great things going on. And we are so fortunate because we have the river actually flowing directly through our community, which some communities don't have up and down through the Miami Valley. But we're really taking advantage of that and what that means. Because again, you get by the river, you've got the bike path, you've got, and again, it's that vibe, it's that excitement, it's that energy that happens around this place that and then in turn invites you to invite more people to come back with you when you come back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of a walk through our downtown so we can visualize this in the places that we have here in our community right now. So come on a walk with us. All right, well, Chris, we are standing here obviously directly across from something that there's a lot of energy, a lot of work that's going on over here, and I can't tell you how many people ask me, what is happening over here at the Charlene building?
Yeah, so this is a great example of the things that start to happen when you put forward a vision like we have for the Downtown Placemaking Initiative. Local investors and property owners begin to sense the opportunity that they have to take an awesome old building like the old Charlene Apartments, as we refer to it, and invest in it, redevelop the upper floors into downtown living units, so they're really cool spaces where somebody can live downtown and be close to the amenities, and then take the lower level retail spaces and revitalize those so that they're of a quality where it'll attract cool shops like the furniture restoration store that's in there, photography studio, boutiques, and things of that variety that really begin to create an atmosphere in your downtown that people like and desire, right? So that's what it's all about. When we do the placemaking initiative and we put forward this vision, it's not just pie in the sky dreamy stuff. You actually want to be able to implement those things, and then you start to realize the spin-off activity of investments like what we see in this building.
Yeah, which is really exciting because we have the vision, we have the idea, we have the desire for our community, and then other people jump on with that vision as well. And I know that the photography studio, for example, we had a ribbon cutting there a couple months ago, and it's really a neat, eclectic space. Again, the exposed brick in the wall, a little bit of an industrial feel. And I've heard a little bit about what the apartments are going to be upstairs. So great living space, great place for boutiques and other type of businesses that is close to it's part of our downtown. And also in wonderful walking distance for living up there, walking down, have a bite to eat, have a drink, walk by the river, come home, and it's all right there around where you live.
Exactly. No, that's exactly the idea. Taking these buildings that have had some deferred maintenance for a period of years and be able to initiate some reinvestment in those properties and lift them back up to a standard that everybody's proud of.
Exactly. And we've got some beautiful architecture here in our community. It was not long ago in the past year, I was walking downtown and somebody was walking around with a camera from outside of our community, even outside of Miami County. And all they were doing were taking pictures of the facade of different buildings. And we do have some beautiful buildings here that we want to keep and we want to celebrate. And so it's wonderful to see private development coming in and doing just that.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Okay. We are here right in the middle of where I think everything happens. It's the heart of our downtown. We have the library here. We have a variety of different buildings as we think about architecture, which we talked about a little before. And we even have a piece of public art with this statue of Bill McCulloch. And I will say many people have asked me, why is he facing in this direction? It's because he is looking towards Washington. So that is why he is facing in this direction. But Chris, let's talk about this part of our city.
Well, I don't know that there's a better example of placemaking in Piqua. If you really want to understand placemaking, you come down to McCulloch Square and you get a sense of the space that's defined by the stature of these buildings that surround the square, and you look at the character of the architecture, be it the Fort Piqua Plaza and the Richardsonian Romanesque design that it represents, or the post office and the massive columns that are on the front of that building, or the trust building, and just the scale and the finishes. And then you've got the square right in the middle of that, where you've got these park benches and public space, the gazebo, which harkens back to the day of the market being down on the square, and currently the farmers market still exists here today. And even the McCulloch statue, the public art component that's represented in this space. All of those are ingredients for an experience that makes people feel good when they're in that kind of space. You start adding to that amenities like a deli or a nice sit-down restaurant where people can come and they can go get a bite to eat, or they can be having an evening out at the banquet center and then stop in for a glass of wine. Or if it's during the week and you come over and you grab a sandwich and you come sit on the square and you eat your lunch out here enjoying a beautiful spring day. That's placemaking. It's providing places that make people feel really comfortable and want to be there and want to come back.
That's right, that's right. And we, as you said, we've got a little bit of public art, we have a little bit of public history, we've got, a dedication to the Mills brothers who came from Piqua, Ohio. We have a plaque back there about the civil rights movement. And so there's a little bit of everything right here in this place within our community. And it's a place that you can sit, it's a place that you can gather. And no matter what time I am driving by the library, it seems like there's always people gathering in this place, whether they're sitting and having lunch, or there's, young people who are just sitting and gathering together. But it is a great, great gathering spot here in our community.
Part of what makes this space so comfortable for pedestrians is, people kind of overlook it, or they're not sure they really like the idea of something like a raised crosswalk or the curb extensions at the intersection. But those are very instrumental in helping the pedestrian or people feel like they belong here. Right. It's not cars first. You're going to get ran over if you dare step towards the front door of the library. It's a visual cue to motorists that, hey, pedestrians are first. They're welcome here. And then on the people side of it, it gives you a sense of comfort knowing that you have that additional buffer and there's something there that is really a physical indicator that this is where the pedestrians belong.
Yeah, and and I think about placemaking, I think about the visioning that our city has had for so many years. And the beginning of a lot of it was Fort Piqua Plaza, which now we're celebrating our 10th year. Was it 2000?
Yeah, we just celebrated 10 years. Right?
10 years. And what a vision that, people here in our community had to bring this back to the glory of what it was back when it was a hotel. And it really is a stellar landmark here in our community, and one that people, once again, outside of our community, outside of the Miami Valley, talk about. How did small town Piqua remodel, renovate this? We did it because we have a lot of people here in our community that love our community and want to give back in any way they can. So great testament to that.
And we get that, all the time, as you say, when we're at conferences or outside of the city visiting with other communities or individuals from elsewhere. They'll comment about how attractive Piqua's downtown is and how remarkable the Fort Piqua Plaza building is. And those are the things that really begin to define a community's image and people's perceptions about a community. So there isn't one single thing that you do to make people say, hey, Piqua is it, that's where you have to go. It's a collection of things, and oftentimes those are incremental changes that over time they start to accumulate and become something that people notice, and they're really excited about it. And when we think of economic development, people are used to, well, you go get a 100,000 square foot plant and you put it out in the farm field and the smokestacks and whatever. That's not how economic development works anymore. Frankly, businesses want to know what's the quality of life like in your community, what are the amenities for my employees, and would I live there? So if I'm going to ask my employees to live there, and if I'm going to try to employ the local population, are they happy to be there? Do they like their community? And don't think for a minute that when they're thinking about locating in your community that they're not stopping in the coffee shop and listening to what people are saying, because they do.
Yeah.
We know they do. They tell us. And often they tell us that some people are saying not so nice things. And when that happens, the person saying that are effectively contributing to the demise of economic development in our community. So it's a collective effort. Community members, citizens, community leaders, all have to pull in the same direction in terms of the want for a better quality of life, a higher quality of place, and doing these things that we're talking about in terms of placemaking, which really relates to so much more.
Well, and I think you're right. If our community thrives, it's because everybody in our community are helping to move it forward.
We lift the boat together.
We do. We all have responsibility. No matter who you are, young and old, you have a responsibility as we move our city forward. We are our own best cheerleaders, and that's true. So, okay. All right, well, let's continue our walk. So here we are on the main street of our community, and many times people say, what's going on Main Street? And I have to say, in the last year especially, we've had a variety of wonderful little shops start to pop up, and we even have a little bit of a problem now that people are having a little issue and have to walk a little farther when they park, because parking has gotten to be, we have enough parking places, but you may have to walk a little bit to get to where you're going.
But just as you would if you were at the shopping strip, right?
Exactly.
And parked out in a huge parking field.
Exactly.
We don't have a parking problem. We really have an abundance of parking spaces available, especially if you take into consideration the amount of off-street parking available on the private lots. So in some instances, we may need to do more to work together with our private sector to create some shared use parking options. But we're really fortunate in that we have a really thriving downtown with a lot of great shops, both long tenured shops and some newer shops. And there's sufficient and adequate parking reasonably close to all those destinations. If you look around downtown Piqua and you think about what's here, you think about Winans Chocolates and Coffee, and they've been here for, my gosh, over 50, 75 years, I think. You look at Barclay's men's and women's clothing store, over 75 years. The second story frame shop, Can't Stop Running, which is, relatively speaking, a newer addition to our downtown. And then you look at This and That Candy, and I could go on. I'm going to leave somebody out. Blue Bub Boutique is another new one. You have shops that are of a really high quality. That the Apple Tree Gallery. Where do you find something that's of that unique quality and the character that place is? And it's part of our downtown.
Right.
And we take those things for granted. Even the Reedmore Hallmark.
Yes.
Cinemas come and cinemas go. They're not downtown anymore. It's nostalgic if they're there, but they're predominantly not. So you could have a really big empty building that's hard to fill. We're fortunate that we have a Hallmark in there, and it's an anchor destination in our downtown, and they've revitalized the facade. It's of a high quality, and so we're starting to see even more of that happen. And I mentioned Winans earlier. They're the first to tell you that it was the placemaking initiative and the visions that we were putting out there that really gave them the confidence to go forward with consolidating their operations into the old Piqua Daily Call building. And I look to that building and I point to it and I think of what it was in terms of the plain nondescript facade.
Right.
And what they were able to do to that with the blade sign and just a little bit of enhancement on the window treatments. And that now is something I point to and say, we're going to have more of that as a result of the placemaking efforts and the public investment we're making. It's going to inspire more people to make those kind of investments and create those kind of destinations in our community.
And that's really true, and as we talk about our different businesses on Main Street, so many of them are destination businesses. You know, whether it's that you're coming to this and that candy to get a variety of candy, or you're coming to Susie's to get ice cream, or you're coming to Dobos. You know, I mean, there's so many businesses that we have on our downtown that they in themselves are part of that destination of why people come here. And I know in talking to Ryan King at Can't Stop Running, a huge part of his the people that come into his store are not from Piqua. A huge part are outside of Piqua. And so it does bring, you know, our stores bring people downtown, which then in turn they go get their shoes. They may stop at 311, have a beer, or have something to eat, or get ice cream at Susie's, get coffee at Winans. But you know, you come for one thing and then you see there's all these other things that you want to do while you're here.
Yeah, no, you'll hear the same thing from Bert at Barclays, you know, is something that you want more of. And then you start thinking about the banquet center and the 300 or so people that are there every Saturday, virtually as far out as we'll open the calendar, it's reserved. The weekday events that the businesses are hosting there, the workshops that they do, and the number of people that attracts downtown, say in the morning, and they're probably drinking coffee, or they're getting some pastries at the donut shop. Those things are all how you stimulate local economy, and things become better for everybody. And those are the things that we want to drive more of, you know, and you think about the new restaurant coming, Lock Tenders, that'll be in the corner of the plaza. That's not going to be just Piqua people who eat there. It'll attract people from outside the community who want to come see what's going on with the new restaurant. And that's awesome because, you know, they may spend some money there and have a good evening and then stop over and have a beverage at 311. Or if it's a Rock Piqua night, go enjoy a concert on the riverfront. And during the weekday, we'll have the new deli over here, Stone Ground Deli. So people that might have otherwise been driving out to the interstate for a chain meal from one of their restaurants and sending that money out of the city can now go to a local destination with a local proprietor and keep that money in the community. So that stuff really does make a difference. And we are very fortunate to have Main Street Piqua and the leadership that we have there. In fact, our Main Street program is recognized around the state as one of the best in terms of what they do. And they will tell you in terms of spending locally what a difference that makes in your economy and the bottom line.
Right, it really does, it really does. You know, and as we think about destination places, we also want to mention Three Joe's, which is directly off the downtown area, but again, another destination that people come to as they come to our city because they have such a wonderful reputation. You know, and I say consistency. Consistency is why people come back because they know the service they're going to get, they know the quality of food they're going to get, and definitely Three Joe's is one of them as well. You know, mentioning Main Street Piqua, you know, we've got our beautiful, beautiful mural here, which Main Street headed up, along with some private donations and some donations from different foundations. Just another wonderful way to show that life is moving here in our community. It gives a wonderful celebration of our past, of our history, but also the fact of how we're moving forward as well. And I know that there's a lot of conversation now that we have the first one. When are we going to have the next one? We have all these wonderful facades on different buildings that we definitely could have many more of those throughout our downtown.
And that's another piece of the placemaking component. It's that visual interest, it's public art, it's those quirky, interesting things that tell a story and attract your eye and just create memories of that destination you were in. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the festivals downtown. Taste of the Arts and Fourth Fest and those things, Arts and Ale Festival. Those are all, again, part of that placemaking equation in terms of getting people into your downtown and getting into those spaces where they really have a unique experience they wouldn't otherwise have. We both enjoyed the Farm to Table event last year, which was in the Canal Place parking lot. And I can't even remember how many people commented to me about, wow, this is a really cool space. And it's because, you know, for one evening, we took the cars out of that space and we put people in there, and people saw it from a human scale, from a people perspective, and they realized just how significant the architecture is at the back of those buildings, just how comfortable that space is with the trees and the canal walk. So those are all things that are placemaking.
Right, right. Well, and again, this gives a nod to Johnston Farm, which again is not downtown, but is also part of our amenities here in our community. So
part of our heritage.
It is part of our heritage, definitely. Okay, we're going to now walk down to Lock 9, and we'll talk a little bit about that part of our city. this with third graders, and one of the things we talk about is the canal place here in our city. And what I tell them is, you know, back in many years ago, we didn't have I-75 and we didn't have trucks to bring things back and forth. And so our community used the canal as a way to move things from place to place. And so we are actually standing on where the Erie Canal was, correct?
Yeah, no, this alley alignment in the Canal Place parking lot, as we call it, were part of the Miami and Erie Canal alignment as it traversed down the riverway and then cut through our downtown, as opposed to following the Oxbow and the river. It went right through downtown, and it crossed all of these side streets, North and Green and Ash and High and Water, and then reconnected to the river here. But what's significant about this is you think about the amount of growth and prosperity that was created in our community in the 1800s during the canal era, and what the canal contributed to Piqua is really hard to wrap your mind around. So much of our industry that exists today, or the building stock that exists today, especially in our older parts of our community, is attributable to the growth that happened during the canal era. So when we think about the reimagining Loch 9 Park, that's one element of the vision. Another element of that vision is literally extending the trail system along this canalway, along what is now an alley, transforming the texture of the pavement into something that defines this as a pedestrian way, relocating the overhead utilities so they're underground and the space is more visually attractive, and then rethinking about, you know, these buildings and the canal history that they represent. There used to be boats coming through here offloading goods to these spaces, and they were producing things. What if these were once again, you know, artisan spaces, glass blowers, woodworkers? We already have a sign maker, and creating what I would define as an artisan alley. So you've got catenary lights up above, you've got pedestrians and bikes. Businesses can still come and go and get to their doors, but it totally changes the way people feel about this space. And you throw in a mural, and the next thing you know, this is a destination where people are, you know, reading about it in the magazine, saying, "Hey, I want to go there. That's really cool."
Right.
You know,
yeah. I can almost hear the street performers, you know, and just feel that wonderful vibe of this area and what it could be with that. You know?
Oh, exactly. And you see it everywhere you go. You go to communities where you experience it, you know, whether it's Columbus or Traverse City or, you know, wherever. And I think to myself, well, there's no reason that couldn't happen right here.
Right.
And that's exactly the kind of things that we're working on, and we're trying to make that happen here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much potential for this space. You know, we have the wonderful Edison Light building, which, you know, there's a private developer who has been working on that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly, he's still trying to figure out what he's going to do, but...
Well, he's a few years from retirement, but in the meantime, he started restoring the building out of a love for the architecture and the history. It was a Thomas Edison design and originally provided power to our downtown street lamps when it was originally constructed. So he's respectful of that and just wants it to be back into an attractive appearance and a productive use. What that might be, he doesn't know yet. But when he retires, he knows he's got someplace to go do whatever it is.
Yeah, well, it'll be exciting to see what it is. So.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
That's right. In our Loch 9 space, and you know, we're just a little ways off of Main Street, so this is so close connected to downtown. It's just off of the alley we just came through, and obviously we have the great Miami River here as our backdrop. Again, a wonderful plus for our community that this river comes right through this place.
It really is a tremendous asset, and I don't know how many people realize that it's a nationally designated water trail, which is a huge designation, and that in and of itself is able to attract some tourism to your community. But couple that with the fact that as a region, every community from Sydney down to Hamilton who sits along the Great Miami River have joined forces to create what we refer to as the Great Miami Riverway Coalition. And the whole idea there is that each of our communities has something unique and special to offer, but collectively as a region, we have even more to offer. So we want people to recognize the Miami Valley and the Great Miami Riverway as a destination. And so we're doing a lot of different things to be able to leverage that asset that we have for tourism, for economic development activity, and for quality of life issues. And it's cool to see how all the different communities are, you know, everybody's got their own project, but we're lifting the boat together. And so you'll hear more about that, I'm sure, as things progress and the group evolves. But there's a lot of exciting things happening in the regional context. Locally, obviously the big project that we talk about is Loch 9 Park. And Gary Huff calls it a game changer. When we went through the comprehensive planning process in 2007, and the community looked at the different locations throughout Piqua where could we invest our time, energy, and effort in a way that if we do it there, it'll have the biggest impact possible. And as a result of that conversation and through some other efforts after that, it really became evident that Loch 9 Park and this piece of land that sits adjacent to our downtown, right alongside the riverway, it's at grade with the river. You don't have to go up and over a levee for the most part. It's a really unique opportunity that we have here. And so we began to think about how we could reimagine this space to really capitalize on those geographic features that it represents, and also just the character of the space. So you have the Loch 9 on the Miami Canal situated in this area. So you have 90 feet of laid stone walls where those canal boats would come in there, and they would rise or lower depending on which way they're going. And the lock master, lock tender, I should say, would help facilitate that. Well, when this is all said and done, you're coming up to 340 miles of paved trail system in southwest Ohio, and you'll enter into the mouth of the lock walls, and you'll see some 6 foot of the walls exposed, and you'll be traversing up a grade until you arrive at street grade here at Water Street. And so just like the canal boats before us, bicyclists and pedestrians will be navigating that grade change through that 90-foot length of the locks. And then there'll be some public art that'll depict the lay of the land, if you will, from Lake Erie down to the Ohio River, and how the locks would step up across the state and then step back down until they got to the river. And so having those visual depictions of that history so people can really begin to understand what the canal was and how it functioned. And then you throw into that, amenities like the Performance Pavilion, which will be right here at the toe of the levee where we're standing. And you'll be sitting out here in this signature lawn space, the community lawn, if you will, enjoying performers up here on the stage, whether it's music events or, if it's down a river, down a beer, or say it's the high school, some theatrical programs, or maybe it's a community theater program. There's all kinds of opportunities in terms of what could happen on this stage. And with the river as a backdrop, the Ohio to Indiana Trail, the bridge structure there is a landmark feature in the skyline. It's really unique, and it's part of Piqua's DNA. So the idea is, how can we better celebrate this and make it the signature park space where we can host those kind of community events and really help this space to be alive with activity all year round. And so people coming and going from the downtown, just doing a better job of connecting this space to the downtown. When it was redone in the 90s, the concrete is nice, and the seating walls are nice, and the parking lots, it's nice. And we had this 8-foot tall masonry wall that literally separated the downtown from the river. It was a physical barrier. You couldn't see or get to the river without going around that wall. So we've taken the wall out already to kind of signal here's what's coming. And then this August, we'll start with relocating the utilities. So our power system is already busy. People ask me all the time, when is that project going to start? They're so anxious, and it's already started. You can't see it happening because before they can do this, they had to relocate some power lines around the south side of town. And once that project is done around the July timeframe, then they'll be able to vacate all these old lines that traverse right through Loch 9 Park. So these power lines will go away, and there's some other power lines that will be buried below grade. There's some storm sewer that will get replaced, and then we'll begin to expose those lock walls so that you can see the 90-foot length of stone walls and really begin to imagine what that's going to be like. And then we'll fall right in behind that in 2020 and begin putting the physical improvements back. So the Performance Pavilion, and the concrete platform, and the steel superstructure that'll support the roof, that'll have solar panels. And then you'll have the tree groves that'll kind of frame in the community lawn. And you'll have a splash pad where kids can kind of come and play while mom and dad are checking out the community art and just reflecting on the history. And then of course the trail system itself. And it's hard not to get excited when you think about that. But it's more than just investing a lot of money in a community park to create a signature park space. The investment that we make with public dollars will really be a relatively small number compared to the amount of private sector investment that will spin off of that. So because of the vision and what we've put out there and the plans we have for this, we're already having those conversations with developers from throughout the region and across the state who have picked up on what we're doing by way of conference discussions and presentations and the things that they read. And they want to know, how can I be a part of that? Where can I build some townhomes? What building needs revitalized? And we'll talk about a couple of those here in a minute. But it's stimulating that private sector investment interest in your community, which again helps build up the tax base and lifts us all up together.
Right, and as you said, it's like you can almost start to feel the energy down here as you think about what this space is going to look like. And with the events like Downriver Down a Beer, with the kayakers and the canoers in the water, and the fire rings that we have, and just the energy that will happen around that all-day event. And that is, as Chris said earlier, that encourages industries to come here because they know that the people who are going to work for them are going to have a great quality of life here in our community.
Absolutely.
So it's not only for the citizens that live here, it's for those that might come here as a destination and for those industries that might want to relocate here. So there's so many reasons to do this.
And to inspire smaller businesses to take up occupancy in one of these small storefronts.
Exactly.
And a lot of those industries started off as just a two-man shop, and they grew into something much, much bigger. And that's as important to us as attracting that big guy, because those guys are hard to come by, and every city across the country is competing for those people. We want to cultivate and grow our own entrepreneurs and give them opportunities to be able to do the things that they know they can do. They just need an opportunity and a place and the kind of environment that supports that. So that's all part of that placemaking equation.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, let's walk and we'll look at some of the buildings that we have people who are interested in redeveloping as we talk more about our vision here.
Cool.
Okay, so we are here at the South Seas or Moe's building, and this, of course, is another area of our community that people ask me all the time, what is going on there? What is happening with this building? So, Chris, tell us a little bit about this building.
So this is another one of those structures that it's a really interesting building. If you look at the facade and you see some of the details, there's some curves in the brick and some interesting features that you kind of take it for granted when you drive by it all the time, but when you really start to study it, you realize that not only does the building have an entrance at Main Street and sit alongside the river, but it also has a full basement along the backside that has it's at grade with the trail system. And so that's really unique in that if you look from the Indian Lake all the way to the Ohio River, there aren't a lot of spots where there's a building that's on Main Street and along the river and not separated by the water by a levee. So you factor that into it, and you also look at the location of the building as it relates to being at the south edge of our downtown. It really starts to kind of define the edge of downtown. Its proximity to Loch 9 Park, the adjacency to the trail system, both north-south and east-west, and then of course the river views. And you realize that this is a building that you have to preserve. Yeah. There's some cool things you can do with it. And so as part of the Loch 9 Park initiative and the placemaking initiative, as those properties that were instrumental to what was envisioned became available, we began to secure control of them. And the idea was through the downtown redevelopment strategy that preceded the placemaking initiative, we really studied the building stock and looked at what are the opportunities. And if we do these kind of reuses or adaptive repurposing of these buildings, will that cannibalize what's already downtown, or will it help extend the downtown and contribute offerings that we don't already have? And so that study helped us to understand that the Moe's building, as we call it, 111 South Main Street, I'm going to try to get away from the old name, and some of the other building stock, Loch 9 Park, and then the Zollinger building we'll look at in a moment. Those are really the three catalytic components to making the placemaking initiative start to happen. So specific to 111 South Main, we had the opportunity to secure some US EPA brownfield assessment dollars. So we received the grant to be able to do the assessment work and determine what, if any, environmental concerns are there in the building that need to be remediated. So we did that. It helped us to identify that there was asbestos in the subfloor, the wall material, the ceiling material, and basically it said, you know what, just gut the building. And a lot of mechanicals were beyond repair. The electrical was, added to and cobbled together way too many times. So we through a subsequent grant, were able to secure funds to do the remediation work and really take the building back to just the shell. And then through our CDBG block grant program, we were able to secure funds so that we could do the tuck pointing on the exterior, put a new roof on the building, fix a couple structural issues in some of the structural members, and put the building back into a condition where it is now structurally sound, weather tight, and ready for an end user to come in and build it out to be what I call the cool, fun, funky, hip, trendy restaurant space with the deck overlooking the river that it wants to be.
Yeah.
And if folks will be excited when they get in to see it. It's you got the exposed brick, you've got the exposed rafters. It's got incredible views where big openings exist in the back wall that will eventually become overhead garage doors or big folding doors or something to that effect, with a lot of transparency. And it'll be one of those spaces where it's a destination.
Yeah.
People will want to come there from beyond Piqua because it's unique and it's different. And so you couple that with the investment in Lock 9 Park, the investment in this building, and then a lot of ancillary things that'll be happening at the same time with some parking lot improvements and some building demolitions and some other activities. And pretty soon this really begins to take off. And when that happens, other developers start to want to do some of the other small projects. So it's not like you have to do everything. You do some of the key catalytic projects, and that induces the energy and interest from others to do those other projects.
Well, it's kind of like the old thing, you build it and they will come, and it is exciting to see how different people jump on with this. And I think it's important to note that if we were to have demolished this building, because of the land it's on, we couldn't build anything in its place. Correct?
It would be very difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, just from a feasibility standpoint in terms of cost. People have said, why don't you just tear it down and build something new? You're building in the side of a slope, you're adjacent to the river, you're on Main Street, so the logistics of the work site. The most sustainable building, the most green practice there is to use what you already have.
Right.
All right? So revitalizing these buildings that already have character that you cannot recreate the character that you find in these buildings. So that really just makes a lot more sense here. And in most instances in the downtown. I mean, there are some cases where buildings are just in a location or they're just beyond that point of repair where it doesn't make sense to preserve it. But by and large, the larger building stock, it's almost always a better solution to find a way to preserve it and repurpose it.
Right. And I think about, with Lorna, I've attended a lot of the Main Street conferences, and I've been in a lot of our different cities talking to Main Street programs. And, these eclectic, funky restaurants with that industrial feel really it's all over the place. And so we have this great white box, as you said, just waiting and encouraging somebody to come in and do that here.
Absolutely. And it's what I said earlier with the placemaking vision and the conferences I presented at and the people that we're talking to in the development community, there's strong interest.
That's great. Well, it's wonderful. And pretty soon, I would say in the next few years, we'll all be able to have a nice meal overlooking the great Miami and some type of restaurant establishment located here in our downtown. So let's move on to the Zollinger building. Building we're going to talk about today, and this is the Zollinger building. It is a beautiful building, and I have to say I have been inside this building and there are gorgeous cement columns in the middle of it. Again, another building that you could not recreate today. Another historic part of our city.
Well, and that is so true, and that's spot on. These buildings really are what define the identity of your community. It's like it's who you are, and when people are looking at Piqua and the reflection you would see in the mirror, it's the image of these buildings, and this is kind of what people latch onto in terms of when they think of Piqua. So if we can revitalize these structures, and restore them to a level of vibrant, productive use, then that's what you want to do. And this particular building is the third catalytic part of the downtown redevelopment strategy that we created several years ago. And what that plan told us was that, we knew from our comprehensive planning document that we lack diversity in our housing stock. That is, we have a lot of 3-bedroom houses in the subdivisions, and we have, some rentals available, but there wasn't really that downtown living product or, that space where if it's a condo where, you don't have to worry about mowing the lawn or, so this adds to that building stock and that housing inventory by providing the vision for this. And we've got a developer who we're working with who is on the path to making this happen. The second and third floors would be living units. So it'd be 900 square foot, 1 or 2 bedroom spaces, or they're all modular. Or you could combine 2 and have 1,800 square feet of 2 or 3 bedroom space. And there's about 16 units at the end of the day between the second and third floors. And as you say, there's these massive concrete columns, support columns that are, they're finely detailed and they're newelled at the top, and they're just very interesting. So you leave those exposed, and you've got the exposed brick walls, and you end up with that warehouse style loft living that honestly you typically would find in a bigger city,
like New York. I mean,
yeah, right. And here you have it in this smaller town where you can have smaller town values and live that lifestyle, but still have big city kind of experiences. And so on the roof, it will be a rooftop deck that'll be a common space for the residents, and or perhaps a space that they would rent for small events and functions that want to be able to have that rooftop kind of experience. And then the lower level, so there's actually the first floor, and then the I'll call it the basement, but it's half above grade. So those 2 levels, the developer thinks could very well end up being a community market space of sorts. So think Second Street Market.
Wow.
With maybe a shared kitchen component. So there's a place for local growers and producers who are going to the farmers markets, and they're doing some really cool things from their home kitchen, where they could actually bring their talents to this commercial kitchen and be able to commercialize their product and then grow into a storefront downtown.
Right.
So it becomes a food incubator of sorts. And couple that with, then in the market space, we think there's also a dimension that is what's referred to as co-working space. So it's kind of the intellectual side of, it's like a gym membership. You have a membership to the co-working space, and you can come in and you can hop on the Wi-Fi and you can use the resources available, or you can occupy the small conference room and be able to conduct some business calls or do some meetings without having to own that space or lease that space. So again, it's a way for entrepreneurs to really start to develop whatever it is they're working on from a business model standpoint, and grow into a more successful, larger business that then has a bigger presence in our downtown. So this project is one that we think it's really exciting, for one. For two, it's so different than what you would otherwise find in Piqua. But it's interesting when we talk to the developers from outside the community, especially the ones from bigger cities, and they hear a little bit of hesitation in the community about, wow, can we really pull something off that big? And sometimes we're actually meeting in the Fort Piqua Plaza when they say that. Yeah. And the developer will look around and be like, are you kidding me? You already did the hard project. Right. And so this is, relatively speaking, not that big of a project. It's a lot, but for developers who work in that world every day, and they see a building that's this clean and this solid and this ready for that revitalization, they're chomping at the bit. And so they think that there's tremendous potential here, and they're imagining, they're pursuing historic tax credits. So there's a process that you go through to submit your application. The State of Ohio Historic Preservation Office reviews it, and there are a lot of things that they have to be very mindful of in terms of what they can and can't do, being respectful of the history of the building.
Because it's an historic building, right?
It is a nationally designated, it's on the National Register, and if you do that, then you can access historic tax credits both at the state and federal level, which a lot of times is what makes the revitalization of a building of this scale a doable project. And so the developers know how to navigate that process and access those funds. And there's some other resources that we help them identify and bring to the table. And that's how these projects get done. And so it's a lot of, we did the environmental due diligence with the grant that I mentioned earlier. We bought and secured the building so that we could control it and hold it until the right developer came along. So there are so many things that have to happen to position the property to be ready for that development opportunity when it arrives, that it takes time.
Yeah, it
and
does.
So I'm well over 5 years of my career invested in everything that we're doing down here. And when people ask me about, when is this going to happen or when's that going to happen, it's like, I hear you. It can't happen fast enough for me, but it is happening, and it's just hard to see some of it. But they do anticipate by September timeframe of this year that we could very well start to see some of the bricks and mortar activity on this project.
Wow.
And it's not just the interior, and it's not just the facade enhancements. It's also the space from what's now the back of the building extending out to Main Street, where it's right now it's just gravel. You might recall there was an old railroad era building that sat alongside the parking lot. It had a huge hole in the roof and it was collapsing. It was literally falling in on itself. There was an old DP&L substation that was all but abandoned. So again, we worked through the conversations with the owners of those two properties. We're able to navigate to a point where we were able to come up with a solution that worked for both parties, and we were able to effect the demolition of both of those structures to get rid of that blight that was impeding the potential of this building. And so now it's positioned to where when this building happens, they'll actually reorient it so that the front entrance will be oriented to Main Street. And so there'll be new window openings, and there'll be a new plaza, front entryway, a porch or plaza, and it'll extend out to Main Street with some, a modest amount of parking, but then some green space and garden beds and sidewalks through this garden area that will make it very inviting to come into or from the building, or if you're a resident, to go from the building over to the cool, fun, hip, trendy restaurant, or these little inner block spaces that we'll create where you'll navigate through these passageways that are not the public sidewalk at the street's edge, but the spaces that meander between the buildings. And so you can go from here and traverse over to Fort Piqua Plaza. So it creates what the ultimate goal is for a place, is a place that's very walkable. And in your downtown, if you're going to get it right, you need to make it very walkable. And by that, what you mean is it has to be comfortable for people to get out of their automobile and be able to move by foot to frequent those locations that we've been talking about. At the end of the day, we started off at one point talking about parking. You got to have some parking. Don't get me wrong. It's a necessity. But cars don't buy things. The people in the cars buy stuff. And so the people in the cars have to be able to feel comfortable getting out of their vehicle and getting to the shops to purchase the items, or to live in the unit and lease the space and do all those things that are what make the economy thrive. And so that's all part of the placemaking equation. And there's all these different things that kind of fit together to complete the puzzle, if you will. But when you do it and you do it right, your community becomes a place where people want to come visit, and once they get here, they want to stay longer, or come back, or move here, or come do business here. And the people who already live here start to feel really good about their community and say really good things when the economic prospect is coming around, eavesdropping in the coffee shop. So that's why we do placemaking, and that's why there's such an emphasis that we've placed on quality of place and quality of life, and placemaking being the vehicle to get there.
And I know, I have been in this building, like I said before, and it's beautiful, and the views from the top are gorgeous. I mean, for whoever is going to have living space here, you're going to have some beautiful views that you can go up and have dinner up on the terrace with your guests and your family, and it'll be a wonderful, wonderful amenity. And when I think about our downtown, and I think about, the walkability of our downtown, we are not in that large of an area. From here down to Riverside is an easy walk. As we walk down Main Street and we kind of do the big square, it's an easy walk to get from all of these different places. And we have found that with people who are moving into our historic district downtown, they are moving into that area because of the walkability to the downtown amenities, to be able to walk down and have dinner, to be able to walk their family down to Susie's and have ice cream after dinner, you know, and to be able to go to the park and different things like that. It is so important for the lives of our citizens and for our community as well, just to have that walkability. You know, there is so much to talk about with placemaking, so I hope that this little walking tour that we have done today has helped our citizens understand a little bit about the importance of place, the importance of vision of the place that we live, and the importance of creating a place that brings memories, brings energy, and encourages us to come to it, but not only us, but those outside of our community as well. Chris, thank you so much for your
My
time
pleasure.
today. It's always good to be with you,
Yeah.
and thank you for joining in, and we'll see you on the next Eye on Piqua.